Alright folks, two things before we get into this video today. First off is for as little as $1 per month, you could support us on patreon.com/Nintendo Prime. There is a link down in the description for those interested, and I greatly appreciate it. Secondly, this video is a direct response to a YouTuber called Rerez. But this is not just a commentary on him. This is more so a discussion based around the idea of when are the Nintendo Switch haters going to just let the Switch be a success. If you remember in a prior video where I replied to another YouTuber named Blackbond, I stated that console wars are silly and all we should really care about is what makes us happy. And right now Switch is making a lot of people happy. So this is just a general response to Rerez, but also to the haters in general, especially those that believe that 2018 is going to be the death of the Nintendo Switch. Please enjoy. Hey everyone, I'm doing another one of these discussion videos looking at a video that another YouTuber made about Switch here in 2018. Now, I have to note, this video was made about 3 months ago, back during September, so obviously we have some more information about 2018 as we are now in 2018. But I wanted to take a look at this video because it was suggested to me down in the comments of my response to Blackbond's video on the portability excuse, and I wanted to actually see what about this video is wrong, because there's a lot of Nintendo fans that looked at Rerez here and they're like, he's wrong. No, Rerez is obviously a lot bigger YouTube channel than we are. I don't really care if he has any response to this at all. I'm not doing this for a response. I'm doing this because I feel like I have something to add to the conversation he presents about Switch apparently set up to fail in 2018. That's what I've been told. So let's watch this video and start dissecting what he's saying.
Predicting the future of video game consoles, of course, isn't a perfect science, but if you sit down and take a look at a lot of factors, you can kind of get a good idea of what's going to go on. Now for 2018, the Nintendo Switch has something that's probably not going to work for it: poor third-party support. And there's a lot of factors out there that I've analyzed that I think are going to come true. So this video is all about the Nintendo Switch and why 2018 might be its downfall.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Poor third-party support. I mean, we could, if you're not counting indie titles in there, we don't really know what else is coming besides, Bayonetta 3, which is an exclusive title, so I guess, you know, if you don't want to count that, I guess Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Beyond that, we don't really have a lot of confirmed AAA third-party titles, so I guess okay, let's see what else he has to say.
Entering into 2018, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One will have a large library of games compared to the Nintendo Switch. But by the end of 2018, Nintendo is projected to have a grand total of 264 titles on the Switch. Now this is more titles than the Wii U had for the same amount of time on the market, but it will not be enough to match the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
I know he's probably about to say it, but those systems have been on the market since 2013. Nintendo Switch, of course, isn't going to match the game output of those two systems today in less than 2 years. But I actually am curious about that 264 mark. Let's look up how many games are on Switch right now, because he said that's projected at the end of 2018. So let's see here. How many games are on Nintendo Switch? So I just counted all of the titles on the Nintendo Switch eShop that are available as of 2017. So anything that's released this week is not being counted. 247 titles available just in the United States. 247. Where is this number he's coming from? Is he just talking about retail? Because if he's just talking about retail, then that's a lot of games. If you add the 260 retail games into the number of eShop only games. I don't get what he was almost factually incorrect 3 months ago, and it's only gotten worse since. 260 by the end of 2018. So we're only getting like 15 games this year. Okay. All right, sure, Rerez. Let's continue.
Those systems have simply been out far longer and have had more time to attract third-party developers. The number of releases on the Nintendo Switch might fluctuate a little bit up or down, but in general, we think they're going to stay pretty close to that number of 264. So, why is that a problem? Well, because a larger, more varied library gives gamers who haven't already picked up the Switch a reason to do so. There are gamers on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One who've bought the systems not necessarily for the first-party releases, but for the wide range of third-party releases available. With the Switch's library being so small, it's not going to attract as wide a range of gamers as it could with a selection closer to the size of its competition. 264 games by the end of 2018 might not sound like a small amount, but when you compare to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and set them up in a pretty graph like this, well, you can kind of see just how small that really is.
Are you guys seeing this graph right now? I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Rerez, this is the graph you're working with. Granted, 3-month-old data. 264. I'm seeing what Xbox One has almost 1,500 games on it over the span of what, 4 years now. Okay, so almost 1,500 games, 260. Is there 1,500 retail games for Xbox One? I'm actually legit curious. There might be 1,500 or so retail games for Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I'm not 100% sure. Again, these numbers are 3 months old. But I don't get his argument. Especially since a greater variety of games. Brawlout has sold best on Switch. And now we're hearing that Sonic Forces, a third-party game, by the way, sold best on Switch. We've heard that Overcooked potentially has sold best on Switch. We've heard that Ukulele's best version of that game is on Switch. Is he just discounting indie games? And I understand what you guys are saying. That's a weak argument, right? I actually agree that he has a point that even now that we enter 2018, we still do not know about very many AAA third-party games. But he never quantified AAA third-party games. He just said third-party games. Indie titles are third-party games. So we already almost have 260 titles heading into this year. If anything, there could be 300 plus this year, making the Switch total at the end of 2018 above 500. I understand if this was a video made like when Switch came out, but it was made in September after Switch was massively successful and many indie games were already reporting huge numbers. So I don't. Is this making any sense to you guys? I don't get what he's. What's the point of comparing the Switch's number of titles in the first year and a half on the market to other systems that have been on the market for 4 or 5 years at that time? One, it's just a bad comparison anyways. If you're trying to argue about value, Switch is a brand new console. You might as well have said the same thing. Hey, why buy an Xbox One and PlayStation 4 when it came out? Look at the library of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Look at the library of Wii. Why buy a Wii U? It's a straw man argument. It's someone who, and I guess this is probably why people wanted me to respond to this video, despite the fact it being 3 months old, is that it's the definition, I think, of a straw man argument. And that is that he has this thought process in his head that Switch is going to fail in 2018. So he's going to pick out little factoids that support the notion that it's going to fail in 2018, while conveniently ignoring all of the other signs. You know, when you stick to that firm number of 260, but then you ignore the massive, and we're talking massive sales success of indie titles on the platform, massive sales success of even the AAA third-party games on the platform, it's baffling to me. That you would have just assumed that 2018 is not going to have this kind of support like they had in 2017. I don't get what he was thinking 3 months ago. The Switch was already proven at that point. I mean, I have my skepticisms for this year, but not based on. He's just pulling numbers out of his butt. He's got no factual evidence here. You know, you crunch the numbers. What numbers? I mean, this was 3 months ago. Games for 2018 weren't even announced yet. Oh man. All right, let's just see. I mean, I'm guessing that this 264 number he has is like the most of his argument. Let's continue.
He is. But what's even smaller is the Switch's number of major cross-platform releases. Among the highly anticipated titles we won't be seeing on the Switch are Far Cry 5, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Red Dead Redemption 2, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Anthem, and even the new Battlefield game coming out for 2018 is rumored to be skipping the Switch entirely. This is a big deal because these games have something called shared marketing.
Okay, so now he's saying that it's not going to get major cross-platform games. So this is what he's talking about with... So everything he said up to this point then, from what I can gather, weren't the major cross-platform games, weren't the big AAA titles. He was talking about games in general. So again, where did this 264 number come from when they've already almost had that many games released on the platform just in the United States? We start counting Japanese exclusives, we might be over that number. Where is this coming from? Seriously, I want to know, where did that 264 number come from that they've already almost surpassed before we even got to this year? Because now he's separating that. This isn't even counting, AAA third-party platform games that are multi-platform and all that stuff. And here's the thing, he brings up, some big titles there. We don't know. I mean, maybe Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming to Switch. He doesn't know. Maybe the new Battlefield is coming to Switch. Again, he doesn't know. I think it's a safe assumption these games probably are not coming to Switch, and I would agree with anyone that feels like, oh, there's no way those games come to Switch. I generally agree with that, but we can't rule it out, right? It's a possibility. Until the games actually release, there's always hope. I'm not saying you should hold out hope. I'm just saying that we don't know. These games were announced before Switch was even announced. So, okay. Anyways, let's just continue. Actually, the new Battlefield hasn't even been announced yet, so who knows?
Marketing. See, when a game gets released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, both Sony and Microsoft sometimes throw money into marketing the title to ensure gamers choose one platform over the other. And when a game is being released on both those platforms and the PC at the exact same time, a publisher is willing to throw in a lot more money into their marketing budget in order to attract as many gamers as they possibly can. What happens is the market awareness of the title, regardless of platform, becomes heightened. A great example of this is Destiny 2, which was released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and PC, and had marketing that seemed to be everywhere you looked. This leads to excited gamers rushing out on release day to get their very own copy of Destiny 2 to play with all of their friends at the exact same time.
I don't know why he mentioned it. I mean, to his credit, it was 3 months ago, so maybe he couldn't have known this, but Destiny 2 sold worse than Destiny 1. So that shared marketing didn't even help the sales of that game, and it definitely did not push... Destiny 2 didn't actually move the needle for PlayStation 4 or Xbox One this year. So shared marketing is a nice idea. But regardless, here's the thing, for these big games like Destiny 2, regardless of if Sony or Microsoft throw money at it, they're going to have huge marketing budgets anyway. You're talking about games that are in the massive AAA gaming space. Those marketing expenses exist regardless of Sony and Microsoft's involvement. And on top of that, okay, so what about the shared marketing for NBA 2K18 or WWE 2K18 or Wolfenstein, the new Colossus? Granted, Wolfenstein's not out yet, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they have some of that shared marketing already in 2017. How do we know they're not going to have that shared marketing in 2018? You name these titles, but then you're ignoring other titles that actually sell better than these titles that could potentially be on Switch. Okay. Again, cherry-picking facts to support your notion and ignoring the things that don't support it. I hate these straw man arguments like that. If you're going to be someone who's trying to be objective, which I think he's trying to be, you need to look at both sides of the fence. So let's see what happens here.
Of course, there's always games that get announced with huge marketing budgets that nobody bought, like Lawbreakers! Cliff Blazinski, you're breaking my heart!
Anyway,
wait a second. So he brings up a counter-argument to his own points. Hold up. So he brings up a counter-argument to his own voice using some funny voice and animations, and then he just glosses over it. Maybe this is just a thing he does, but how can you make your counter-argument and then not address it? Alright, whatever. Let's
Anyway, when a game like this gets released everywhere except the Switch, Nintendo loses out on that shared marketing experience that could have sold gamers on buying the console. To add insult to injury, there are a lot of games being released on the Switch that are old releases, going back a year or even more. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus is coming out on the Switch much later than its contemporaries. That means even though it's a major third-party release, it loses out on the shared marketing potential. Not only that, but by the time the game has been released, its new game sales tag will be much more expensive than earlier versions released, as is the case now with Doom on the Switch. Doom has been on the market for a really long time, and the price has been greatly discounted from that of a new game. However, the price of Doom on Switch is much more expensive, coming in at a full brand new title price.
He makes a point here that is worth talking about, and that is that when games release later on Switch and cost $60 versus the 40 or 20 bucks they cost on other consoles, that's a notch against Switch, and for the most part I agree. I'm surprised he actually made that point. It is interesting that he said, you know, we're talking about the games that come out a year or more after. Than the next example he gives is Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, which very much could come out within 6 months of the original release. But whatever, I guess if he's assuming it comes out a year later, like next holiday, whatever. Who knows what he was assuming at the time. But, I mean, I agree. The pricing of Doom was obviously an issue. The pricing of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus is going to be an issue. It's the reality of the situation because they had new developers work on it. And I believe he's actually going to cover that next. Because, see, I watched this video back in September, so I remember little bits and pieces. And I think he's going to address that next, where, like, of course they have to charge more because they had to put development work into it. So it's kind of a conundrum, but it's like, but they still get the game. And in the world of Switch, or in the world of video games in general, isn't it always better to have the game than not have it, even if it comes later? I guess I don't understand the counter. I guess the argument he's making here is that even though they get some of these titles, they're not getting the shared marketing from those titles, but they got the shared marketing of NBA 2K18 and WWE 2K18 and FIFA. They got all that shared marketing.
That's gonna be a hard sell in comparison for a lot of gamers. And what choice does the developer have? They have to make the game come in at a certain price because they are modifying it to make it work on the Switch. It's not just a one-to-one port, it's something a little bit more time-consuming.
You have nothing good to say about Nintendo. Why don't you just say something positive about the Nintendo Switch for once?
Well, okay, there's an advantage to the Nintendo Switch. Its entire library is portable. Even if a game is really old and it's just now being released on the Switch, being able to take it with you anywhere is something you simply can't do with the Xbox One or PlayStation 4. However, the ability to play these titles on the go comes at the cost of the game's visuals and performance in some instances, but it also comes at an increased price tag. The Switch is a new system and costs more than the base model of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but also game cartridges for the Switch are more expensive than game discs for the other guys. But for consumers who don't value the portability, the cost may seem too steep. But anyway.
Yes, Nintendo Switch costs more than the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 base models. Even the slim models. I get it. Sure, fair argument. It's an argument that's been made about Switch ever since the $300 price point was announced. But guess what? It's selling anyways! Seriously, look at the sales numbers. Some have it projected that it sold 15 million last year. We don't even have the final sales for 2017 yet. Obviously, that price point has not been preventing the system from selling. You know, you talk about if people don't value the portability, it doesn't seem worthwhile to them. It's a hybrid system. It is portable and at home. People value that. Majority of the audience takes advantage of that fact based on Nintendo's own numbers. So, I get the argument being made. But it was already proven invalid before he released the video. Like, not invalid in that he's stating incorrect facts, but that those facts are impacting the sales. They're not. And now we're in 2018, where it's more than likely that if we don't get a price drop, Nintendo's at least going to start bundling games in at $2.99 by this winter. Okay, I guess the price of Switch is why it's, you know, breaking sales records and why it can't continue to sell well in 2018. I don't know what to say. All the sales data is working against him. And he didn't have today's numbers back then, but he had the numbers up to September back then. So Okay, I guess Switch is dead in 2018 because it's more expensive. You heard it here first, Nintendo Prime. Copyright, trademark. Oh my God, how much worse can this get?
But anyway, if the Switch gets its numbers up with first-party titles, then I'm sure third-party developers will start paying attention, right? Numbers don't lie after all, because as everyone knows, first-party Nintendo games sell Nintendo consoles. They're the driving force for Nintendo sales, but what if what happened with the Wii U repeats itself with the Switch? The Wii U had a ton of great first-party games, but the third-party support was lacking, and judging from the announced games for 2018, it looks like the exact same situation is unfolding and could be even worse. Nintendo has only announced a handful of first-party games for 2018, and while Kirby and Yoshi look like fun experiences, they're hardly console sellers. For Fire Emblem and Pokemon, we simply don't have any information about these games, and there's the very real possibility they'll be delayed into 2019. A fact, by the way, that may become more real the longer we go without any screenshots, gameplay, or even a title released for these games. That's it. 4 games for all of 2018. With such a small release of first-party games in 2018, there's less of a reason to pick up a Switch, and their console sale numbers may suffer for it.
Obviously, he's got a cynic's view of 2018. I don't know how you can compare Switch. You can compare the third-party support on Switch to Wii U. I think that's a valid comparison until we get more confirmations on the major third-party support. There's definitely more indie game support. The Switch is already, almost at 264 titles that he projected at the end of 2018 now, in the beginning of 2018. So obviously, he's not looking at the indie situation and how much better it is on Switch and how well those games are actually selling. They're not just fodder. People are buying them in droves. Golf Story, oh my gosh, the numbers on that are huge. But whatever. But to compare the situation to the Wii U is weird because he talks about how, Nintendo games carried the Nintendo platform, and it's going to find itself in the same situation as Wii U, because Wii U had a bunch of great Nintendo games. Wii U had a ton of amazing exclusive games, but they were massively spread out. I don't know if people remember, after launch, the next major Nintendo game, yes, there was a couple games that released smaller titles. Lego City was kind of like supposed to be one of the big ones. I think it hit in like February of 2013 or something like that, but after launch, Nintendo didn't have another Nintendo IP game release until, August? When Pikmin 3 came out in 2013? Do the math on that. That's like 9 to 10 months after launch, Nintendo finally released another Nintendo game. How long did we have to wait after launch for another Nintendo game on Switch? Oh, right, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Oh, wait, ARMS. Oh, wait, Splatoon 2. Oh, hold on. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Oh, wait a second. I think I'm forgetting something. Oh, yeah, we have exclusives like Golf Story and Snipper Clips in there. Oh, wait. I'm forgetting something. Oh, Super Mario Odyssey. That's right. And Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Oh, man. Wait. All of that? We're not even a year out yet? And that happened? That's already significantly better than the situation with Wii U, and he knew this back in September. So how can he compare it to that? And how can he assume, oh, there's only 5 announced titles, or whatever in 2018? Sure, at that time, obviously, I don't know that Bayonetta 3 is also coming. But it's like, or at least Bayonetta 3 is announced. I shouldn't say it's coming next year. We don't know. There's also Pokemon on Switch that has a tentative 2018 date. He didn't know that back in September, so I'll give him a pass on assuming that Pokemon's like a 2019 game or that Metroid's a 2019 game. Oh, wait, didn't mention Metroid Prime 4. I think this is very interesting in that his cynic outlook for 2018 is that Nintendo did these amazing things in 2017 and they can't repeat it in 2018. A fair worry, a fair concern. But this was said 3 months ago. Nintendo has a pattern of when they announce their games. And I think he's actually about to defeat his own argument about this right now. Let's just see what he has to say about Nintendo Directs and all that stuff.
But what about Nintendo Directs, where they announced a bunch of games you didn't know about?
Well, of course, there's always the chance that Nintendo could make a surprise announcement of more games, and they are known for doing that. But even if they were to announce 50% more games than they already have, they still wouldn't be near the number of titles that PlayStation 4 has announced for 2018.
So he's saying that even if Nintendo announces a bunch of new games next year and releases them, let's say Nintendo has 15 exclusive games hitting on Switch next year, it won't matter because PlayStation 4 is going to have more overall games releasing. I have news for Rerez. I don't know if he's caught wind of this yet. Nintendo Switch is not selling to the PlayStation 4 audience. Seriously, like that might be like a mind-blowing moment for him, and maybe it's something he hasn't realized yet at this point. Nintendo Switch is catering to an audience that PlayStation 4 can't cater to. It's catering to an audience that has a limited time to game and needs the convenience of an on-the-go and at-home device. It's the same reason the smartphones blew up, because we needed that convenience of a computer always in our pocket, because we can't always stay at home sitting in front of a desktop. We can't always sit at home sitting in front of a camera like this. We need cameras on our phone. We need computing devices on the go that can also be used at home. Our phones can connect to our smart TVs and our computers, and we can control a whole house at times with the phones. We have like, you know, smart devices at home, like the Google Home Mini and Alexa, and we're at this point where people want that convenience of being able to take their gaming everywhere, console quality gaming, because they don't get that out of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So here's a newsflash for Rerez. It doesn't matter how many games PlayStation 4 is getting. That's not going to impact the sales of Switch, because Switch is not targeting the same audience that PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 is targeting the audience that wants to sit in front of their TVs and play games. Switch is targeting an audience that wants to do that sometimes, but also wants to take their games with them, and you cannot do that with PlayStation 4. So, this isn't even a console war point. Like, I'm not saying, oh my god, Switch is better than PlayStation 4. I'm saying that the audiences for these platforms, while there is some crossover, of course, I'm a PC gaming enthusiast, and I'm crossing over with Switch. I own an Xbox One. I'm crossing over with Switch, or Switch is crossing over with those platforms, or however you want to look at it. Reality is that it's because it's providing me something that those platforms can't. No matter how many games those platforms have, they do not give me what Switch gives me. So, I don't understand the point. The argument is basically, because PlayStation 4 is cheaper and has more games, it's going to destroy the Switch in 2018. Nintendo might as well just throw in the towel. But the Switch is not only selling extremely well on its own as is, and has all the momentum, and has a whole bunch of stuff coming in 2018 already that we're aware of, it's providing you something that there is not another device on the market. Like, Switch is competing in its own hybrid market. There's nothing else out there besides the NVIDIA Tegra Shield, which has been pulled down. They only use the TV version. So, why are we comparing this to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in the first place? Console wars, I guess? But Nintendo had less games in 2017 and still did awesome. Man. I don't understand. I don't understand where this is going. This is just getting worse and worse the further and further we get into this video. But we gotta push through. We gotta continue. We're almost done.
So try as they might, this is a problem that requires more than just a few extra game announcements. Nintendo isn't the leader right now, Sony is. What Nintendo needs right now is a game changer, like an entirely new virtual console experience of all their classic titles, making them portable for the first time ever of their home releases. But as we've already discussed, that doesn't help modern gamers wanting those modern experiences, especially ones being developed by third parties. But I know what you're gonna say, cause everybody always says this. Come on, say it with me now.
Pokemon will be the game that sells the Switch!
You idiot! When the 3DS was hurting, Pokemon came along and showed everyone that there was a reason to own the system. So it could do that for the Switch too, right?
We don't need your Call of Duties or Far Cries or any of your stupid Battlefields. We have Pikachu!
Oh boy, let's give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt. For the past 7 years, a single main entry in the Pokemon game series has sold at the most around 16 million units worldwide, give or take a million or so. Let's round that up to 20 million and make a prediction that this is gonna be the best-selling main series Pokemon game in over 15 years. Let's say that 75% of sales of Pokemon is paired with the separate sale of a Switch. That's a boost of 15 million Switch sales. sales. If you combine 15 million possible Switch sales with the 5 million that exists right now, and what the heck, another 5 million for organic growth in 2018, before Pokemon comes out, you're looking at a system that by the end of 2018 will have sold in totality 25 million units, and at that point in 2 years, Nintendo will have gotten pretty close to where the Xbox One is currently sitting today in September 2017. That would be quite a boon for Nintendo, right? Considering that Xbox One has been on the market for nearly 4 years? Although it sounds pretty exciting, it's probably not gonna happen. These numbers are incredibly exaggerated in Nintendo's favor, and they don't even take into account the amount of time it takes to sell a system, not to mention the production time. Nintendo is already having difficulty keeping Switches on store shelves because they simply can't make enough of them, even if—
What did I just listen to? Alright, to his benefit, he didn't have all the current sales data we have today. Only 25 million units in 2 years. We're going to be at almost $20 million. We're going to be at almost 20 million units in a year. Okay. And even the sales data back then in September, right? A lot of sales data had it around 7-8 million units sold. So it was already 3 million units ahead of what the sales data he was working with, which was just basically launch month data. Launch month plus, you know, like the next month or two. He wasn't working with all of the entire summer's worth of sales data for some reason. I don't know why. He probably just tried to go with official numbers at the time or whatever, which is weird because there was never an official number that said 5 million. So I don't really even know where he got the 5 million from. Maybe it was his own projections, and he projected it would only sell 5 million in 2018 before Pokemon came out. If it sold 5 million in 2018 before Pokemon came out, based on the current sales data, there would be almost 25 million Switches in the wild before Pokemon comes out. Say Pokemon sells 15 million more Switch units, then Nintendo would be at 40 million. And here's what's weird about it. He talks about the supply and the demand back then, because back then, Switch was very, very hard to get your hands onto. It was sold out everywhere. But we're talking about a full year later. He was suggesting that the Switch would be sold out and unable to keep up with demand for an additional year and a half, essentially, through Pokemon's launch, assuming it comes in late 2018. He was assuming that Nintendo could not catch up to demand at all. But here's the thing, even if it was true that it was still hard to get Switches, it's maybe because the Switch would be selling at an incredibly high rate. You tell me that Nintendo only had the ability to make 25 million Switches over the course of 2 years? You gotta be kidding me. Nintendo had a plan to ramp up production. Maybe their plan wasn't to ramp up production as much as they needed to, but they were already projecting to sell 10 million Switches at launch day just this year. So you're telling me that they didn't have plans to be able to ramp that up to 15, 20, maybe even 30 million units in year 2 if they needed to? That they didn't have plans to ramp up production over their projections, by the way, in year 1, because they said, look, we are on pace to make 10 million. That's what they said at launch. And then they said, but we are ready to ramp up. They ramped up, and now we're looking at selling between 15 to 16 million in year 1. I don't really understand what is he doing here. Like, listening to this argument actually makes my head hurt. I don't know where he got that 25 million. Even in September, how did he get to 25 million? And I understand he's being generous, saying that Pokemon's going to sell 15 million Switches, and it very well might, but that is generous. It's still 25 million. I mean, we now know that Nintendo's planning to sell 20 million units just in 2018 alone. You think they're planning to do that without releasing more content? I mean, that's on top of the numbers they have now. We could be talking about Switch at 40 million by the time we get to 2019. That's reality. 25 million is a massive, massive undershoot. But he's acting like these are conservative, or these are on the high end of his projections. High end. And that, yeah, it'd be close to the sales of the Xbox One. So he acted like this was a good thing. So if 25 million is a good thing, then I have to see what else he has to say.
Them. Even if the demand for a new main series Pokemon game would reach these heights, I don't think the hardware supply would be able to keep up. What's more realistic is the system does okay, but isn't the runaway success a lot of people hope it will be. It'll probably surpass the Wii U by the end of 2018 and probably match the current Xbox One sales of 30 million by the end of 2019. But by that point, Nintendo Switch will have just got its footing, while the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have continued to gain sales during that time. Both systems even at their most basic, will still be more powerful than the Switch, and with their newer versions of the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, they'll make the Switch look ancient by comparison. Heck, even the prices of the original PlayStation 4 and Xbox One will be far cheaper and more attractive to consumers, because Microsoft and Sony will continue to make revisions of the hardware like they've done in the past and make them even cheaper to produce and cheaper to sell. Plus, they'll still be able to have access to those huge libraries of games they already have right now. So by the end of 2018, it will be too late, with third-party developers having moved on, seeing no advantage to releasing games on the Switch, because as far as they're concerned, they've got to work a lot harder to make it work on that system, and they will have little to no reward. With a lack of first-party games and a whole bunch of third-party games arriving on competing platforms, 2018 looks like a bad year for gamers on the Switch and developers on the Switch. This is something that is really unavoidable right now, and even if Pokemon does come out, by that point, it really won't have an impact. 2 years from now, you're gonna have a whole bunch of cell phones that are probably as powerful as the Nintendo Switch, and if developers wanted to make games on something like the Nintendo Switch, but with a larger install base, they might just go with the cell phone manufacturer, seeing as how cell phones always tend to sell a lot more than video game consoles nowadays. Look, I'm not saying that 2018 is gonna kill Nintendo or the console, I'm just saying that it's gonna be a bad year and probably make the next couple of years afterwards kind of a living hell. This isn't good, and I hope Nintendo can find a solution out of it, because from where I'm sitting, I don't think they have one.
Wow. You know, Rerez, if you're out there and you're watching this video, I'd love to have you on the Nintendo Prime podcast sometime. Not because I want to roast you. I actually want to see what you think now. What do you think today, after your numbers have already proven to be way off base? That Nintendo's already proven almost all of your arguments wrong, outside of a few. You have a few with the third-party support, and the more games coming on other platforms. Those are all legit arguments. They just don't seem to be mattering. The Switch is selling in spite of all of that. The price tag, the Switch is selling in spite of that. You know, you're not saying that it's going to be the end of the Switch, but you're essentially saying that 2018 is the end of the Switch. Man. And here's the thing. You have no problem praising the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It makes me realize that I think, I don't know you, Rerez, but based on this video, I almost have this assumption that you prefer those platforms. Now, I'm not saying that you didn't take some unobjective looks. You're right. Maybe cell phones are as powerful as the Nintendo Switch in a few years. And when that happens, you know, why would they make games for the cell phone? Blah, blah. Well, I can give you a couple reasons. One, the cell phones don't come with inbuilt controllers, standardized controllers. Two, we could be talking about the Switch 2 in a few years. You're acting like just because PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 or whatever will be coming out in 2 to 3 years, that Nintendo doesn't have something up their sleeves. You're acting like they're the only companies that make iterative consoles, right? The new Nintendo 3DS didn't happen. The DSi didn't happen. If anything, there's going to be a new Nintendo Switch, or Nintendo Switch XL, or Nintendo Switch Mini. There's going to be new iterations of Switch that are more powerful than the current iteration. I can guarantee that's going to happen, especially once it gets to the point where most mobile phones in your pocket are as powerful as the Switch. I guarantee you Nintendo's going to have something up their sleeves to keep that market going. It's really weird that you have all these base assumptions back in September, especially September, not at launch. We're not talking about skepticism at launch. We're talking about skepticism in September that Nintendo's going to be done in 2018 and we're going to be in a living hell in 2019 and 2020 for some reason. Why? The only thing I can come up with is that you just don't like the Switch. And because you don't like the Switch, you don't like that it's $300 and less powerful than current gen under TV boxes, because it doesn't have all of the big AAA games. Because of that, you don't like the system, and you don't trust Nintendo to get more games out in 2018. Let me tell you something about the Switch, and not knowing, you know, how many more games are coming from Nintendo in 2018, 2019, 2020. In Nintendo's history, the history of the company, Nintendo has never been fully dedicated to developing games for a single platform. Shortly after the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, they came out with the Game Boy. All right? Ever since the NES and Game Boy era, Nintendo has always developed games for 2 platforms. So that meant that their games are split across multiple platforms. What we know is that in this year, the 3DS is essentially dead in Nintendo's mind. They don't have a lot of major games coming to it, including Pokemon, which is now coming to Switch. So what this tells you is that for like maybe the first time in Nintendo's history, all of their development teams are focused on the Switch. Now, obviously, they have a couple separate teams working on mobile-only games to get 2 to 3 of those out per year. But that 2 to 3 pales in comparison to their output on 3DS and Wii U. So if you combine the output of 3DS and Wii U onto a singular device, and remember, the 3DS sold 70 million units, by the way. When you talk about how PlayStation 4 is the market leader, I guess you're ignoring the combined sales of Wii U and 3DS and now Switch, right? This generation, Nintendo's had 3 platforms. The combined sales of all of that are actually more than the combined sales of Vita and PlayStation 4. You don't want to have that conversation because you probably don't want to realize that the 3DS itself has sold just as many units as the PlayStation 4. Granted, the 3DS has been out 2 years longer, but 3DS also has a massive library of games. So how do you think those games got there? From third parties supporting the platform. And now if this is Nintendo's only portable platform and only home console, you think third parties are just not going to bring it? We already know Project Octopath Travelers is coming. There's probably going to be Bravely Default 2nd coming. There's tons of indie games on the way. There's tons of third-party games on the way. Literally everything you said in this is ignoring Nintendo's handheld side of gaming, which makes up arguably 70% of the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch is 70% portable, 30% dock. Rerez, my boy. I don't know how you could think this stuff back in September. And I'm sure some of these arguments you stand by today, and I understand what you're saying, but you are ignoring a massive part of the video game market when talking about Switch. When you say Switch can only sell 30 million by the end of 2019, which, by the way, they'll probably have 30 million by the end of 2018, if not more. You're talking about a market that's ignoring their handheld market. Nintendo has always sold more handheld units than home consoles. I don't know if you know this. Nintendo's handhelds have always been more successful than their home consoles. Always. Game Boy outsold NES and SNES, N64, DS outsold the Wii, 3DS outsold the Wii U. Like, this is a consistent pattern with Nintendo. Game Boy Advance outsold GameCube and stuff. Like, it's a consistent pattern that handheld is Nintendo's best-selling platform, not just because of Pokemon. You talk about Pokemon like it's the only handheld franchise Nintendo has. Have you heard of a little thing called Animal Crossing New Leaf? How about Fire Emblem and how well that blew up on handhelds this past generation? Yeah, Kid Icarus Uprising did really well. I don't understand, I guess, the argument that Switch can't keep up with the current generation platforms because it's not as powerful, it doesn't have the same amount of games, the same type of games, and it costs more. Those are all like valid criticisms, but that's if you're trying to make the Switch into something it's not. The Switch isn't trying to pretend it's a PlayStation 4. It's not trying to pretend it's an Xbox One. The Switch is a hybrid system that can play some home console games and all portable games on one platform. Nintendo's never had this before. We don't know what's going to come from this. The future is extremely exciting because of it, because as a Nintendo fan, we've never seen Nintendo put all of their games on a single platform. It's never happened in the history of the company. That just makes me extremely, extremely hyped for the possibilities. And I can't believe that you, Rerez, if you claim to be a Nintendo fan, I don't know if you do, but if you do, can't see that excitement. Can't see why people don't see your arguments and why now all the facts are working against you. All I have to say, I guess, at the end of the day is, if you don't like Switch and Switch isn't for you, I said this in the last YouTuber I responded to, that's okay. Just admit that the Switch just isn't the console for you. Based on the arguments you've made, Rerez, I'm assuming that PlayStation 4 is probably your platform of choice, and that is fine. There's nothing wrong with you choosing PlayStation 4. But don't put down the Switch with a bunch of misnomers, guessed facts that you don't have any information to back up, and I guess I made a video a while ago called how a lot of people are misunderstanding the appeal of the Nintendo Switch. Rerez, I'm just going to end by saying this. You are the prime example of the type of people that misunderstand the appeal of the Nintendo Switch and why it's a machine for gamers and why people are picking it up in the first place. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Rufflejans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this conversation video, you guys let me know down in the comments below. Let me know. You guys continue the conversation. Give me your arguments for or against success for Switch in 2018. I am Nathaniel Rufflejans. Like this video if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it. Subscribe. Be sure to hit that bell icon, and whatever. Nintendo Prime is out.